I hope all of you enjoyed a bit of a breather over this long weekend and are as ready as you can be for the transition from winter term to the second semester. This shift is always a bit of a jolt as we move from the distinct mode we have been in since returning from winter vacation to a familiar yet very different mode awaiting us when we file out of chapel this morning. I suspect it will not surprise you to know that I see great value in both modes. And while I certainly will miss the time I was so fortunate to have with Mr. Waters and 16 terrific students in our Complexity of War course, I'm also looking forward to getting this final semester for the class of 2020 off to a great start over the less than 6 weeks standing between us and spring vacation. We are into the second half of this 1 year we have together, and I'm eager for all of us to move in the direction of squeezing as much as we can out of it before Prize Day and the end of the year arrives in late May and early June. With that in mind, I turn to what I would like to spend a bit of time talking about this morning, with a number of factors moving me in the direction I'd like to explore. The concept that has been on my mind is citizenship, what it means to be a good citizen, an engaged citizen, and how and what we might do to strengthen our collective notion of citizenship at Brooks in 2020. Perhaps I've noted this in a chapel talk before, and pardon me if that's the case, but I was once asked by a consultant whether it would matter if Brooks School ceased to exist. My answer, a point I share confidently and routinely when speaking about our school, is that Brooks School alums make communities all over the world better communities than they would be without those Brooks School alums as leaders and citizens in them. I believe that. I have seen it time and time again. And while it would be overly presumptuous of the school to take all the credit for that, I do think your years here play a part in how you engage and contribute to the many communities you will be a part of throughout your lives. Communities all over the world would be a bit less than what they are without Brooks School alums in them. That's why Brooks School matters. Maybe that's arrogant or hubris run amok, but I believe we have done well at fostering good citizenship over time. The factors that have moved me to this broad topic this morning are many. Certainly the winter term experience we just had in spending time with a dozen or so veterans, including 2 Brooks School alums who once lived in Thornhouse with me, is at the front of my mind. Dr. Liscott's talk here just 8 days ago is also bouncing around in my head, and the combination of her talk and our winter term experience has me wondering a lot about the degree to which citizenship is equal in this country, and who does the heavy lifting and bears its heavier burdens. I am thinking a lot about the impeachment trial. Just the 3rd time an American president has been impeached in this country's history. And the fact that I have done only a so-so job myself of keeping up with it all. A trial with the potential of removing an American president from office for the first time in our history is taking place. And it is a bit of a sideshow for many. That feels odd. I'm thinking a lot about the presidential primary season, poised to begin in just 6 days with the Iowa caucuses, followed by the New Hampshire primary just 2 weeks from today. By my count, 139 of you will be 18 years old by November 3rd of this year, when I hope you will go with millions of Americans to the polls and vote for a presidential candidate you prefer. I'm also drawn to this topic because the need for excellent citizenship has never felt greater in my lifetime. soon to be 52 full years. It strikes me that we have an obligation at Brooks, by virtue of the many privileges and advantages we have and the point in time we find ourselves, to raise the citizenship bar, both for our own experience together and for the leadership and citizenship roles I know you will have in your lives. So what do I mean by good or excellent citizenship? It might be easier to start with how some define good citizenship and then build from there. The Pew Research Center surveyed Americans this past summer about what makes a good citizen by prompting those in the study to comment on the importance of 11 items associated with good citizenship. At the top of the list was voting in elections, with 91% of respondents indicating this to be a very important or somewhat important criterion for good citizenship. Yet, according to the United States Census Bureau, national voter turnout in the 2018 midterm elections was 53.4%, which was the highest midterm election turnout over the past 40 years. And for the 139 of you who will be voting age by the fall and fit into the 18 to 29-year-old category, just 36% voted in the same 2018 elections, up from just 20% in 2014. The presidential elections are a bit better, with the U.S. Census Bureau reporting 61.4% voter turnout in 2016, which is within range of voting levels in presidential elections going back to 1980. Here too, however, only 46.1% of those in the 18 to 29-year-old category voted. Through it all, it strikes me that if 91% of Americans surveyed believe voting in elections to be an important measure of good citizenship, and we never get close to that figure, something is amiss. Furthermore, if you don't vote, or we don't succeed in conveying to you our opinion, at least my opinion, that you have a civic obligation to vote and pull those 18 to 29-year-old percentages up, we will have missed an important part of what we are tasked to do with you. In so many ways, the outcomes of today's elections will matter a lot more to you and your lives than they will to people at my advanced stage in life. The same Pew Research Center study highlighted that a majority of those surveyed indicated that good citizenship also requires that we pay our taxes, follow the law, serve on jury duty when called to do so, volunteer to help others, participate in the U.S. Census every decade, and respect the opinions of those who disagree with us. I don't believe all of these items are all that profound, but this final point, that 61% of those surveyed feel respecting the opinions of those who disagree with us, is a very important criterion of good citizenship, does stand out. When you add the 31% who believe it is somewhat important, we can surmise that more than 9 in 10 Americans believe respecting the opinions of those who disagree with us is an important criterion of good citizenship. Furthermore, this study highlights that notions of good citizenship are largely shared by Democrats and Republicans alike. With just a few exceptions, we are not wildly at odds in the United States about what constitutes good citizenship. And what most agree is an especially polarized political climate, and at a time when the country seems particularly challenged to live up to this citizenship ideal, this study gives me great hope. We know we should respect the opinions of those who disagree with us. We have more in common with one another than not, and that foundation has a great deal of promise. So how do we at Brooks help move the needle in the direction of realizing this promise? I think we do so by remaining mindful of our values, particularly empathy and engagement and integrity. I think we do so by disagreeing with ideas we do not see eye to eye with more than we disagree with the people sharing those ideas. I think we do so by emphasizing that facts are essential to any informed conversation, but also accept that many arguments can and will be formed based on the same set of facts. I think we do so by being unequivocal about our belief in the dignity of all people and our abhorrence for all forms of hate. And finally, I think we do so by talking about politics in ways that are more transparent, trusting that what we have to share will be heard and considered long before it is judged. I don't know how we can cultivate great citizenship if we don't work at fostering an inclination to be less guarded and more transparent, really hard work in this day and age. So in an effort to model that a bit, and before closing, I want to give you a taste of my politics, a bit of the thinking behind why I support what I support. I've never missed an election, and am a registered independent who has voted for 3 Republicans in my life. I voted for Senator John McCain in the 2000 Republican Party primary, Ohio Governor John Kasich in the 2016 Republican Party primary, and Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker in the most recent gubernatorial election. Beyond that, it's only been Democrats for me. While I will always remain a registered independent, I have been drawn to Democrats in my life for a number of reasons. First, my upbringing. Both of my parents are pretty staunch Democrats, and there's no question that influenced me growing up. I love and respect my parents. Their point of view continues to hold weight in my life. Second, I've generally felt that Democratic candidates have been more committed to pursuing policies in the state or country that aim to level wealth discrepancies that neither party has actually been very successful at realizing. Third, I've generally felt that Democratic candidates have been more invested in trying to foster inclusion in greater degrees of equality under the law for the increasingly diverse country we continue to become. And finally, I suppose I have generally felt that the Democratic Party has been more committed than the Republican Party to achieving the greatest good for the greatest number of Americans. I respect the fact that some argue Republicans have actually been more successful than Democrats when it comes to shrinking wealth discrepancies, fostering inclusion, and delivering a greater good for a greater number. I just don't agree with those arguments. That's not to say they're wrong, or that I might not someday find them to be more persuasive. I have plenty of friends who don't vote the way I vote. I don't always understand why, and their positions frustrate me, but they're still my friends. To be clear, I'm not asking anyone to reveal anything about who you have voted for or will vote for. That's your business, and that's not a question anyone should ask of anyone else, in my opinion. But I do think we contribute to elevating citizenship in general when we do our part to help others feel less inhibited when sharing any sort of political point of view. It is in these settings and with an open mind that we discover and sharpen what matters to each of us. We become informed citizens and voters. And if I yearn for anything, for the 139 of you who I hope will begin a long life of voting regularly this fall, and the balance of you who are not far behind, it is that you choose candidates based on some thoughtful and dynamic criteria that guides you in the direction of some candidates and away from others. That you know why you are voting for what you are voting for. That it is rooted in ideals and principles that you believe will make the country a better place. We have an opportunity in this presidential election year to help one another be great citizens. And my hope for the term is that we find and make time in and out of class to do just that. Eric Liu, who founded the nonprofit organization Citizen University in 2012, with hope of reinvigorating Americans' sense of civic identity, suggests, and I quote, "The point of civic life is not necessarily to have unanimity, even if that were possible. It's not to foster consensus around the American creed. It is to foster healthy engagement with that creed, a sense of responsibility for sustaining and living up to that creed, and then welcoming not only diversity, but disagreement and argument about what that creed calls us to do." So a really short version of saying that is, to be an American is fundamentally to be in creative, joyful, productive argument about what it means to be an American, end quote. I don't think it has ever been more important, or that the responsibility to foster and grow engaged citizenship has ever been greater than it is now. So my charge this morning is to step into the term intent on paying attention, learning from one another, and moving in the direction of being the citizens we have an opportunity to be. Have a great start to the semester. Thank you.